Welcome r/EntitledParents. Stop sending your kid over. I'm not a babysitter. At first I wasn't sure if this was an entitled parent story because I think this woman is just plain crazy. But after reading a few of these I have figured out that crazy and entitled are one and the same. Years ago this new neighbor of mine, she had recently moved to a house on the next street over, kept trying for the better part of a summer to use me as a free babysitter. It started when her kid, who was really a cute, well-behaved kid about 7 years old, showed up at my door at 7:15 in the morning. We were all just waking up and getting around, so I told him that my boys weren't ready to play yet and to come back in a few hours. That is when the kid told me his mom had gone to work. This seemed a bit odd to me, so I brought him in and tried to call his mom. This was the time of only landlines. Sure enough, she was gone. So I brought him in and fed him breakfast. He stayed with us the rest of the day and he got along well with my 2 boys, who were 5 and 10. I had only talked to his mom about 2 times, so I had no idea why she would think this was a good idea. When his mom came home I walked him over so I could talk to her. I told her not to do that again. I told her that I would be willing to watch him on occasion, if asked first, but not every day. Her response was, "Well, what else do you have to do all day?" This kind of took me by surprise. I tried to tell her that I work at home on commissions. She rolled her eyes and told me that being an artist isn't a real job, and besides I was married, so I didn't need to work. I should have pointed out to her that she was married and working, but I felt myself getting angry and I didn't want to argue with her. "Just don't do that again," I said to her. "You have teenage kids home for the summer, have them babysit." She frowned at me and said, "They work." I said, "So do I." Then I went home. The next morning at 7:15 the kid sheepishly shows up again. Once again I bring him in and feed him breakfast and later lunch. Once again I took him to his home and once again told his mother to please not do that again. She actually tried to tell me that it was my neighborly duty to watch him, and I told her that if she sent him tomorrow I wouldn't be there because of a doctor's appointment. She said that as a babysitter I should have given her several days notice about this. I angrily told her I was not a babysitter and then went home. The next morning I made my 7 AM appointment. Blood work, that is why it was so early. I did some grocery shopping afterward, and it was about 10 AM when I got home. The poor kid was waiting for me on my porch. He had been there for nearly 3 hours and the little guy was scared and hungry. That night when I took the kid home I was angry. I told her how the kid was scared and alone. She actually said that she had told me I hadn't given her enough time to find anyone else, and that his being alone was my fault. I pointed at her and said, "I'm not a babysitter. Don't send him over again." That night this woman had her adult nephew call me to scream at me for not being home when his poor aunt dropped her son off. How dare I leave a small child alone like that? I told the nephew that his aunt knew I wasn't home, so it was her that left a child all alone. I said that I had repeatedly asked his aunt not to send the kid over anymore, and I was not a babysitter. This nephew freaked out at me when I said that, and I hung up on his screaming at me. This worked for 2 wonderful quiet days. Then right back to it. I tried everything, but this woman insisted that it was my neighborly duty to babysit and would tell me as much. Finally I decided that to solve this problem I would just get a job outside of my home, and that way she would have to stop. I was too much of a pacifist back then. I no longer am. I landed an interview for a position at the local library and I was ecstatic. I told the woman to keep her son home because I had arranged for my kids to stay with their grandmother while I went to this interview. The next morning I drove to my mother-in-law's house and took my kids inside. When I went to leave I found this woman's kid waiting for me in my car. She had actually followed me there and put her son in my unlocked car and then zoomed off while I was dropping off my boys. My mother-in-law wasn't the most flexible person in the world and she adamantly refused to watch an extra kid. I had to cancel my interview. I was livid. I toyed with several ideas at this moment. I could take the kid to her job and leave him with her, or I could call the police and CPS. I really wasn't sure how stable this woman's job was, and I didn't want her to get fired, and when I went to go call the CPS I chickened out, because it really wouldn't be fair to the little boy. Besides, I had heard really scary stories about CPS. In the end, I just waited for her to come home. I left the boy at my house with my hubby. I planned on doing a lot of cussing, and I stomped over to her house and met her before she even got out of her car. I shouted at her. I told her she was dense, stupid, moronic, and crazy. I told her that she had lost me my job interview, and if she sent her kid over to be watched again, I was going to call CPS and the police. I told her that she was violating my space, and if it took going to court to get her to knock it off, then so be it. She then put her hand on her hip, and in her most snotty tone she said, "Well, if you didn't want to sit with him, all you had to do was tell me." I really do not know how I kept from punching her right then and there. This comment was so asinine. I turned on my heels to start stomping home when I saw her husband pulling up. Now this was the first time I had ever met her husband. He worked at a job that only allowed him to be home on weekends. I can't blame him. I wouldn't want to be around her either, but when she saw him she turned tail and ran into her house. He saw that I was upset and asked me what had happened. I told him all of it, especially the incident at my mother-in-law's. The poor man was shocked. He had been told that I was being paid, and he had been giving her money to pay me. He had no idea all this had been going on, and he was very apologetic over the whole thing. In fact, he apologized again to my husband when he came over to pick up his little boy. Finally, she stopped sending her kid over. Later I heard from others that she was bad-mouthing me and warning folks about what a horrid babysitter I was, but I took that as a favor. I didn't want to babysit any kids other than my own, and I still hate doing so. I don't hate the kids. I love kids. It's dealing with the parents that I don't like. The kid came over only once in a while after that to play with my kids, after he called first to get permission, exactly the way it should be done. I'm sure his dad had something to do with that, because the kid only came over on weekends. This is one of a few stories I have involving this crazy lady. Her only entertainment in life seems to be seeing how bizarre she can act in this neighborhood. I'm luckier than my other neighbors in the fact that she leaves me alone now, and I'm very happy with that. A bit of a the next day in the shower response, but I wish I would have casually and calmly asked, "Did you not understand me the other 2 times? If she answers yes, threaten to call CPS, because even though the babysitter said no, she still dropped the kid off, which is negligent to say the least. If she answers no, also threaten to call CPS, because a person with the memory of a goldfish, when it comes to important stuff like IDK, the safety and well-being of her freaking kid is probably not suited to be a parent." CPS does more than just take kids away. I was an EMT for years. Called CPS and apps all the time. They don't show up and take the kid away after the first call. They make welfare checks, do interviews, counselings, etc. that determine what the issues are. Of course, this being local or state government, it takes a while. I saw more kids left in situations they never should have been in than I did kids taken away from situations they shouldn't have been removed from. In fact, I never saw a kid removed from a household that responded well to CPS intervening. Keep an eye on the kid from afar. If it looks like he's being neglected, a visit from CPS is usually all that's needed for parents or guardians to get it together. CPS does not just remove kids from households that are safe. She didn't care about the kid at all. Everything she was doing in life was solely for her and herself. She endangered and traumatized her kid multiple times to save on the babysitting bill and to rob her husband out of a fictional salary. Her only goal in life is getting the most money out of a situation with the least amount of work and on the very short term. All that to have more money for her personal expenses. If someone on a parking lot or Craigslist offered her $500 for the kid, she would sell it right away and pretend the kid ran away and got lost, then beg for donations and favors around her to ease her pain of losing her kid. She's either a psychopath incapable of feeling any genuine emotion with her own kid, and or a severe narcissist who think the entire world is here to serve her. Her own kid is here to earn her free extra money. Her neighbors are here to take care of them. Her husband is here to give her free extra money. The fact that it results in her abandoning a child on neighbors while robbing her husband does not matter because it does not affect her, at least until CPS is involved. Police arrest her, her husband divorcing her. That's the only reason why she finally reacted when not mentioned calling the police or CPS, and when the unaware husband arrived, because she knew it would finally affect her situation. Instead of putting up with it, you should have called the cops or CPS, or dumped the kid at the nearest police station and let them handle the situation. When you found him in your car, how did the hag even get him into your car to begin with? Did you leave the doors unlocked when you brought your kids into their grandma's house, or did the hag have the nerve to break a window to get him in? You're not obligated to keep him just because his stuck-up mom keeps dropping him off despite your repeated demands to stop. Though I think you should have told the hag that if she really wants you to babysit, she should pay you, and that you charge a non-negotiable $85 to $90 an hour fee. That might stop her from bringing him if she thinks you're serious about the fee. You're feeding him with your family's food that you bought for yourself and your family alone, wasting your time and day that you could be doing other things that you need to do but can't do with a kid in tow. Yet the kid's mom can't be bothered to compensate you for your time while she's off doing who knows what before finally coming home, and seems to expect you to watch her kid for free, like you don't have plans or a life of your own that doesn't revolve around her and her kid 24/7. If she's unwilling to pay any amount of money, tell her that the next time she dumps her kid on you, she can pick him up at the police station or CPS building, because it's not your responsibility, especially if you're not even getting paid to watch him.